Fourth session of the weekend following what we saw overnight in the US session, losses, and of course what happened in the Chinese session with the suspension of the CSI 300, the largest stocks in China. The sentiment overall bearish. Also, oil names are going to be in focus. We saw significant pressure, particularly in the Australian session overnight. So it's similar names, the miners as well, I think, that are going to be some of the key drags on the market this morning. As you can see, overwhelming red behind me. So far, the stocks are up 600, lower by 0.8%. Let's just take a look at the individual sector performances just to see how things are moving on the downside. Yeah, as expected, the basic resources lower by more than 3% there. Oil and gas, also some of the underperformers, down 3%. It makes sense, but just looking behind me, actually not one sector in the green. Similar story actually to what we saw in the US session yesterday. Energy, of course, the focus there too, but this morning we've got WTI and Brent off more than 4%. On the actually the outperformer here, the chemicals, the autos, the healthcare, but I mean even they're significantly off. Let's take a look at the individual bourses here just to give you a sense of the performance, and overwhelmingly red, as you can see on the big heat map there. We've got the SMI over in Switzerland, actually the outperformer, only lower by 1%, I should say. But compared to the indications I was talking about with the futures, where we had the German markets off, more than 3%, actually this is significantly better on the German markets, lower by 1% here. Weaker performance for the French markets, lower by less than 3%, 2% off for the FTSE 100, but obviously the oil and the miners are significantly impacting that market in particular. Let's give you a look quick at some of the oil names and how they're performing. Remember, we saw crude prices slumping to more than an 11-year low in the overnight and session this morning, and as you can see, that's having an immediate impact. We've got Shell off by just shy of 3%. A similar story across the board. The likes of Total, BP actually only down in this case by 2%. Repsol really struggling, in fact, over in Spain, off just shy of 5% here. Let's give you a look at the miners as well, because again we saw a lot of pressure there as well, and making sense. BHP Billiton off by more than 6% here. Similar story as well, as you can see, for Antofagasta. It's interesting to look at what's going on for gold in particular too. We mentioned this earlier, seeing 9-week high for gold in the overnight session too. We did see some of the gold miners gaining in the US session yesterday, which is also quite interesting. Let's flick on and look at China, because I mentioned that was the real focus overnight, with the suspension of the mainland Chinese equities. Yet more triggers in terms of the flow in just the first 30 minutes of trading. So these are some of the names that are most exposed as suppliers to China. Texas down 1%, Nvidia over in Germany as well off more than 3.5%. So it's a broader story here. The two focuses being China, the commodities angle, and of course what we see from oil today too.